Welcome back to I Am One, everybody. Today, Unit 2 review. What have I learned? And by the end of this lesson, I will be able to identify the parameters of a linear equation given a graph, a table, or equation, or situation. And remember pretty much the parameters of a linear equation. We have y equals mx plus b, right? So the parameters would be pretty much m and b, right? Which is our slope, right? Our slope, our delta y over delta x, and also b happens to be our initial value, right? Initial value. All right, and throughout the unit, we pretty much have seen the different ways we can look at a line in the form of y equals mx plus b. It can be in a table, right? We can identify m in a table by looking at the change in y and looking at the change in x. Same thing in a graph, right? By using the slope triangles. We can also identify those. And then b, the initial value, is pretty much our, if we started with a situation, remember it was our figure 0. If it were looking at a graph, then it's pretty much the y-intercept, right? Or pretty much where we're starting off from, right? It's where our pattern starts, figure 0. So again, we've given it different names, but it's pretty much is still the same thing. Where does a graph cross the y-axis? And again, that's our b. So we're going to start off with the first problem right there, 2.1.1.3. For the line graph to right, so first we want to identify what is the slope, what is a y-intercept, and then we're going to write the equation. Now, again, we're going to keep using the same form of the equation, which is the slope-intercept form, right? Slope-intercept form. Again, this is the y-intercept. So if we're using the slope-intercept form, then we're going to be looking at pretty much, we look at our line, and you guys have seen, again, some of these problems already either on other assignments. So what you want to do first is always identify from left to right 2 points you can easily identify in the line. So I keep going down, and then again, the reason I picked those points is because if you guys look in the background, they go through the grid, right? In a little corner in the grid. So I know they're exact right there. So here, the slope, we can use the slope triangles to identify. It's a little bit easier. So we go down 1, right? -1. That's our delta y. And then our delta x, right? Delta x, we go 2 to the right. So down 1, 2 to the right. So m equals delta y over delta x, which would be pretty much -1 over 2. And then looking at the y-intercept again, so make sure that you guys, that's our b value, right? So we want to make sure that we find where it crosses the y-axis. And if you notice, it's right here. So b equals +1. And then we want to write the equation. So everything is in y equals mx plus b form, right? Y equals mx plus b. So your equation would be pretty much, we just replace m with what the number it is, which is -1/2. And then b equals +1. So we replace this with 1. And then becomes our first equation, y equals -1/2 x plus 1. All right, let's look at the next one. So 114, identify m and b in the following equations. And again, what do m and b represent? Graph each equation in the problem. So now we're given in, first we were given a graph, right? And now we're given an equation. So here we want to identify m and b. And again, it's pretty much in the same form, right? Y equals mx plus b. So m is always a 1 next to the x. So in this case, it's +2. And then b is always pretty much the constant number, right? The one that doesn't have an x or any other number letter next to it, right? So in this case, it's +1. Now, when we want to graph a function in this case, right, we want to make sure that we start off at our y-intercept. B gives us our y-intercept, which is 0, 1 in this case, right? So remember, whenever you have an equation, you start off at the y-intercept, and then to find the next point that you're going to use to graph, then you're going to go from there, whatever the slope tells you, right? So in this case, I'm going to go 2 up and then 1 to the right. So remember, if there's number below it, no number below it, just put a 1 under it. That reminds you to go 1 to the right. So we start off with 0, 1. We go up 2, 1 to the right. And if you want to find more points, you can just keep following the same pattern, right? up 2, 1 to the right, up 2, 1 to the right. And that pretty much gives us our line, right? And again, make sure you guys label your X and Y axis and then put the scale down, right? In this case, I went by once, just to make sure that the reader understands. And then in the next problem, we have y equals 2 over 5x minus 4. So now here we want to look at pretty much, again, m, what is m, right? And then what is b. So m in this case is 2 over 5, meaning I'm going to go up 2 and then 5 to the right. And then b, so remember, here we have negative 4, right? So negative 4. Make sure you also use the symbol that's right there. In this case, so again, we start off with our y-intercept, and then which is 0 comma b or 0 comma negative 4. So we're going to go by ones on the x and the y-axis. So I'm going to go start all the way down here, which is 0, negative 4, right? So that's 0, negative 4. And then from there, I can go up 2 and then 5 to the right. So up 2, 5 to the right. And again, you just need 2 points for any straight line. On the other one, I did more points just to make it more exact. But if you want to, you can always just, if you have a ruler handy, it always helps. So you can always just 2 points make any straight line, all right? Okay. So now we continue with problem 117. Shirley wants to start with $85 in the bank and saves $15 every 2 months. Write an equation for the balance of Shirley's bank accounts and be sure to define your variables. All right, so here, again, we're going to write the equation first of all in y equals mx plus b form, right? Now, we can always keep using x and y. We can always use different variables. It doesn't really matter, right? So here, we can always say when it says be sure to define your variables, we want to make sure that we tell people what x and y represents. So here we know x is going to be equal to something and then y is going to be equal to something, right? Since it is a situation, we want to define them. So here, if you notice, let's see what the two things that they're talking about, right? So Shirley wants to start with $85, right? So that's important right there. That's the amount of money she starts off with in the bank and saves $15 every 2 months, right? So again, remember that the slope is a rate, right? So m is a rate, meaning we're dividing something over something else. And here's a big clue, right? Pretty much we're saving $15 every 2 months. So meaning our rate is going to be dollars over months, right? Or in this case, money over time. Okay, so we pretty much can define both x and y now. So we know x is the change in x represents months, right? So that's time. So the time in months. And then finally, we know that the change in y represents money, right? Because we want to see how much money we have in the account every 2 months. So that's pretty much just money, right? And dollars, right? You can have any other currency, right? There's always euros, there's pesos and stuff like that too, right? So here in this case, we're going to talk about writing the equation. So it's going to be y equals. So again, we want to identify what's m and what's b, right? So given the information right here, if you notice, it says Shirley starts with $85. That word right there tells me that this is pretty much the initial value, which would be our b, right? So b equals $85. And then the rate, right, and on how she's saving money every 2 months happens to be 15 every 2 months, right? So that would be our m, 15 over 2. So we can fill in the information now in the equation. So that would be 15 over 2 times x plus our initial value, which is 85.